Lordy, there are tapes. The breakdown starts now. Good evening and welcome to the breakdown. I'm Tara Setmayer. The Rick Wilson is traveling, but he will be back for the next episode. However, we have a packed show for you tonight. And of course, when Rick is not here, I always make sure I have a special guest to talk to keep it all interesting. And tonight, we could not have had a better guest than star ace political investigative reporter for The Guardian, Hugo Lowell, is back with us, friend of the show. He has been kicking ass and taking names on this Trump legal stuff all over the place. I originally wanted to have him on to talk about a different story that he broke, but then the Trump tapes and the declassified audio and all of that we've been talking about for the last 24 hours, that story broke, and he has some reporting on that, and he has some more reporting about Trump's legal team and the absolute chaos going on inside all of it. So stay tuned for Hugo Lowell. He will be with us shortly. And of course, we have a couple of other things to talk about since the last time we were together. Ron DeSantis is officially in the race, and it has not gone too well for Mr. DeSanctimonious himself. What a disaster. We were all traveling last week on Lincoln Project business when the DeSantis announcement happened, and we were leaving our hotel rooms to go to this event, and Rick and I were like texting each other, like, do you believe this? All of us, Michelle, our creative director, who also helps produce the show, we were all on a chat like, this is a disaster. 20 minutes of silence? What a mess. And we often say in politics that the way someone runs their campaign is often indicative of how they'll govern and what their presidency will look like. Well, yes, failure to launch. If it's anything like the way he started his campaign off, we're in for a long one. And I don't think that he's going to really recover from that. I mean, he can, but it has just been so rocky. And I've got to say that, of course, we had to give him the Lincoln Project treatment with his launch because it's been this slow moving tragedy for months and months and months and months, right? The stupid book tour, which we know was a soft launch. That didn't go so great. And then he waits so long. He lets Trump drag him for months. And then this is how he starts off. So for Lincoln Project, of course, we want to say rest in peace, DeSantis's campaign, because it's over already. Take a look.
Wow, look at this. You guys said hi. How are you guys? Good to see you. So what do you got? Go right over here? Yes. Okay.
Is there anything DeSantis could do to win over your support? No.
We have Trump at or around 60%, and we have DeSantis below 20.
Ron DeSantis has yet to be able to take a Trump voter away from Trump. Make America great again.
DeSantis is Trump light.
And honestly, we have businesses that have been locked down for made in China.
And why go light when you can get the real guy?
Based on polls, he's not doing okay with anything.
DeSantis.
DeSantis would apparently tell dates he likes Thai food, but pronounced it thigh.
It smells really good, I'll tell you that.
And if they corrected him, he would make up an excuse and leave because, quote, he didn't want a girlfriend who corrected him.
Ron DeSantis does not like to make eye contact. He does not like human beings. This is a guy who notoriously is short with people.
How would they know me? Okay, think about that. I'm sick of the judgmental stuff.
He's unpleasant.
You want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous.
The darkness and the weirdness all together is going to make him, I think, very off-putting.
You know, my mom or my wife.
What's with the go-go booth?
Have you ever eaten a chocolate pudding with 3 fingers?
Until, of course, Donald Trump tears his liver out and eats it live on stage.
We'll show you falling behind Trump. Any thoughts on that?
I'm not a candidate, so we'll see if and when that changes.
Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
Oh, poor Ron or Rob or whatever they're calling him these days. we predicted this, as you know. For those of you who watch us, who follow the Lincoln Project, who've watched Rick and I talk about this, whether it's here, whether it's on cable news, we have been predicting this, that Ron DeSantis is not the candidate that people thought. Rick often calls him an overpriced stock, and he's exactly right. And that leads into so many of these other candidates in the GOP jumping into the race. They wouldn't be doing that if they thought that Ron DeSantis was strong enough to take out Trump. But the last few months, he has demonstrated that he ain't got it. And this is one of those where we told you so. There's a chance, but he's been in Iowa, he's been in New Hampshire. I think he's in New Hampshire right now. And the more he interacts with people, the more he interacts in front of cameras and with the media, the more unlikable the guy is. On our editorial call today, Michelle actually said that the more we listen to DeSantis and see him interact with people, the more likable Trump looks. Imagine that. Here's an example of one of the interactions. I think it was either yesterday or yesterday in New Hampshire. This guy.
Governor, how come you're not taking questions from voters?
Stop coming up to me, talking to me. What are you talking about? I'm not here working with people. Are you blind? Are you blind?
I'm not blind.
Okay, so people are coming up to me, talking to me, whatever they want to talk to me about.
What do you mean? What are you talking about? Are you blind? Oh my God, what is that? What is that? We have to listen to this now for the next however many months. And God forbid, could you imagine him from the podium? We thought that Trump's press conferences were a show. This guy, I don't understand it. And the thing about it too, is that there was now that he's under more scrutiny, since he's declared, his wife is also under scrutiny. And we've also said this many times, that Casey DeSantis is really his number one consultant. He doesn't really listen to anyone else but her. And Politico magazine did a big story on her last week. And of course, the pro-DeSantis people called it a hit piece. It wasn't a hit piece. It was very well done, and it was very insightful. And it gave people who were unfamiliar with that dynamic, the way that Casey DeSantis runs everything, it illuminated that. And of course, the DeSantis campaign didn't like that too much, but she's very controlling. She's very all up in it. And that can be problematic for people who've worked in politics, who've worked with a principal whose spouse meddles. It gets complicated. That's all I'm going to say about that. And she is so involved in everything. They think she's a secret weapon, but she could also be a liability for him. Let's just say that. But she's so involved that this little nugget came out in that Politico magazine piece that she actually got him to change the way he pronounces his name. Now, I've been calling him Ron DeSantis, right? DeSantis. But apparently, Ron DeSantis pronounces his name Ron DeSantis. Now, this may seem trivial, right? What difference does it make? Well, it makes a difference because his wife is the one. She used to be in broadcast journalism, by the way, so she understands optics. And she said, no, I think you should pronounce it DeSantis. Well, since he ran for governor, this has been an issue because he pronounces it differently all the time. And it's come up again. Listen to this.
Ron DeSantis.
I'm Ron DeSantis.
RonDeSantis.com. Ron DeSantis for governor.
Taking the oath of office as the 46th governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis.
I, Ron DeSantis.
I, Ron DeSantis.
Just go to RonDeSantis.com.
Everyone knows my husband, Ron DeSantis, is endorsed by President Trump.
DeSantis.com, Mark.
I'm Ron DeSantis, and I approve this message.
Go to RonDeSantis.com.
Ron DeSantis for president.
I'm Ron DeSantis, and I'm running for president.
I mean, it just goes to show you that how phony and manufactured everything is. The freaking guy can't even decide how to pronounce his name properly. this is just too much. Well, besides all of that, it's not just him. We now have found out my favorite governor, not Chris Christie, is going to jump into the race next Tuesday because he sees blood in the water, given how shaky Ron DeSantis's campaign has been thus far. So he thinks he's got a shot now. Mike Pence, he's going to announce finally next week. No one cares. And then the guy from North Dakota, the governor, no one cares. So again, here we are in political Groundhog Day, just like we were in 2015 and 2016, where you had 10 plus Republican candidates all fighting each other for their little 1 or 2% of the vote. Meanwhile, Trump swooped in with 25 to 30% of the vote and won because of the plurality. We are right back there. We are now 9 official declared candidates as of next week when the other idiots get in. We're right back to where we were. So despite everything that's going on, despite all of what we're going to talk about in a minute concerning Trump's latest legal problems and Jack Smith looming in the background, all of these people who do not have a snowball's chance in hell of defeating Trump are still in the race. So I said this on MSNBC last night. These vanity candidates, I say it all the time, they need to get out and they have to consolidate behind one person. I don't know who that is, but they need to decide. That's their problem now in the Republican Party. It's not my problem anymore. We tried this in 2016 and nobody listened. But they have to find one person to coalesce around, or else Trump is going to win again, regardless of what happens in his legal cases. And before I bring in Hugo Lowell in one moment, I just want to bring up really quickly the debt ceiling, because we have been talking about this. Everybody's been waiting with bated breath to see if this would get passed. Thankfully, the adults in the room were able to strike a deal. We're now waiting for full passage in the Senate so Biden can sign it. It will get passed in the Senate, despite some of the exhortations of some Republicans who are unhappy about this or that. It doesn't matter. It will get passed in the Senate, and we will avoid a debt ceiling collapse. Thank God. This is a win for President Biden, and it's a win for Hakeem Jeffries also. I've been impressed with his leadership so far in the House. Their ability to help coordinate this and get it through and negotiate with the intransigence of the MAGA Republicans and Kevin McCarthy. So kudos to presidenting and adulting and avoiding economic collapse. On that note, we want to talk about something else that's in collapse, and that is Donald Trump's legal team. I want to bring in Hugo Lowell, good friend of the show, one of my favorite political reporters. Hugo, you have been, as always, kicking ass and taking names here. You are the political investigations reporter for The Guardian, and you have gotten some excellent scoops, some huge stories in the last week and a half. Well, you always do, but in the last week and a half, it's been like a deluge. I want to start with the big news from yesterday. You didn't break this, but you corroborated it and had your own story come out to back up what CNN reported about this audio tape of Trump at Bedminster, basically bragging about a classified document that he had concerning potentially bombing Iran. Take it from there. What the hell is going on? Because to me, it sounds like this is a big fucking deal.
Yeah, we actually had some additional reporting that built off the CNN story that basically involved Trump on this recording. Says something along the lines of, this classified document I can't show you because I should have declassified it when I was in the White House, but I didn't. So those 30 seconds or so are really key words that he uses that he should have declassified, but he didn't. Right. Is, I think, a really perilous moment for him, because that's the sort of evidence that the special counsel will use to construct a case surrounding an Espionage Act violation, as we have said repeatedly. It's all about the intent, and it's all about the pattern and practice. The tape alone is probably not enough to construct an espionage case. Yeah. But if you can show that Trump knew his obligations with respect to national defense information, because that's the language in Title 18 of the U.S. Code, national defense information, NDI. We don't talk about classified documents. We talk about materials that would endanger the national security. If he knew that he had those kinds of documents, and something, military action with respect to Iran would definitely fall into that category, then you're looking at a lot of exposure for an espionage charge.
So this is really the first time that we've heard the espionage charge being talked about in any seriousness. I mean, I know that people in the national security space have brought up the possibility of this, maybe kind of, sort of, just speculating based on some things that people may have heard or what they thought could have been in there. But we really didn't know what the contents were. I mean, there's been hundreds of these documents, boxes and boxes of them. I mean, it could have ranged from anything as innocuous as his schedule, which is considered classified, to something like this. So this story to me is really the first window into the types of classified documents that he had and that he was so carelessly and cavalierly waving around, showing to people, talking about them, and demonstrating malice here. Like he knew he wasn't supposed to have it, right?
Yeah, I think he effectively acknowledges, and I say we believe because we haven't actually heard the tape, and both CNN and I, we have had readouts of the tape, but they're relatively specific, these descriptions about how he knew that the materials that he had were sensitive, and that he knew that he couldn't share them widely with in this case it happened to be Mark Meadows's book Ghost Writers.
Autobiography Ghost Writers.
Right. But there is something interesting about the timeline, which is worth mentioning. The meeting that was where Trump said this stuff was a July 2021 meeting at Bedminster. And from what we understand, there is a document referring to military action in Iran that was handed back to the National Archives in December 2021. And so it might be harder for the special counsel to kind of use the document that is being discussed on the tape as part of a prosecution, because getting to the willful retention part, if he gives it back, it's maybe not as strong. If the document was, widely reported elsewhere, like the fact that some details are sitting in Mark Meadows' book, again, a jury might see that as, well, maybe this is not, supremely dangerous to the national security. But the tape in and of itself, I think, is more significant. The more I talk about this, the more I think about it, the more I think that the tape in and of itself is material.
Yeah, and the irony of the fact that it was that he asked an aide to tape this, because he asks people to tape these things all the time when he knows that there's book people around or writers around, authors, and he asked this aide, I think it was Margot Martin, was that the one who was responsible for this? And she was another very pretty press aide that he likes to have around, like a Hope Hicks type. And she ended up testifying in front of the grand jury recently. Do we think that she was that this audio recording came from that grand jury testimony, or did this come from somewhere else? Because I also heard Mark Milley's name thrown around here too, that he may have had something to do with this, because him and Mark Milley didn't get along.
Yeah, so our understanding is Margot Martin, as a Trump employee at Mar-a-Lago, was issued a subpoena for kind of her devices and for testimony. We understand that prosecutors imaged her laptop and her mobile devices, and that was likely where they found the recording. When Margot went to testify, they played the recording for her and asked her questions about it. And when she came out of the grand jury, she told Trump's lawyers. And actually, that was the first time that Trump's lawyers appeared to have actually even known about the existence of the recording. And then subsequently, they also got a subpoena for this tape. And so I think it kind of all went downhill from there. This happened in mid-March, so this is already a few months old.
Right.
And I think it's safe to assume that the special counsel has been asking around other witnesses about this tape in particular.
So that's interesting. So they found this from good old-fashioned investigative work, as opposed to someone voluntarily handing it over. God forbid somebody actually did the right thing and go, you know what? I actually recorded. No, that didn't happen.
Yeah,
Trump, right? So. Trump is surrounded by a bunch of sycophants that just don't seem to care whether they're criming or whether they're doing things against the national security interest. They don't give a damn. It's the cult mentality, I feel like. This also raises another question. well, first of all, it blows his defense out of the water. His legal defense team has been trying to say that this wasn't willful. He didn't know. Well, obviously he does. And he has said this over and over again whenever he's asked, like at the CNN town hall, where he's like, I'm allowed to have these documents. I can will them into being declassified. Like, he's admitted this, which has been in contradiction to what his legal team is trying to claim as his defense. This, to me, I think blows that out of the water also, which is perilous for him, I would think, concerning the special counsel, no?
You know, his legal team has actually never endorsed this idea that Trump could, declassify stuff in his mind when he, went up to the residence.
Yeah, because they're sane.
Well, it was
some of them.
This was actually a strategy, from what I understand, thought up by the comms team on the political side of Trump's operation.
Of course.
And this was a political messaging point that got disseminated widely, and might have been kind of successful, because if there is one thing that Trump is very good at, it is muddying the waters. And,
and playing the victim.
And every time he talks about this, he talks about the Presidential Records Act, which is kind of irrelevant when you think about what the special counsel is investigating. If you look at the statutes on the search warrant for Mar-a-Lago, it talks about Section 793 of Title 18. If he wanted to charge a classified documents case, specifically a classified documents case, you would actually charge under 798. And the fact that they chose 793 suggests they don't want to get mired in this classified, declassified debate. But even if they did end up getting involved in that, the fact that what is at issue here is a national security statute. It's not the Presidential Records Act. And I see a lot of kind of reporters ask him, what are the limitations of the Presidential Records Act? It's kind of irrelevant. It's what was allowed under the national security statute vis-a-vis materials that could harm the national security. And I think that's a very important point that Trump never addresses, because it's less easy to defend, I think.
Sure, of course. And this also brings up that it's not just Mar-a-Lago, potentially. This happened in Bedminster. So were there, what the hell did he have at Bedminster on top of what was at Mar-a-Lago? Do we know? Have there been searches at Bedminster? Because I know from your other story that came out today, which we're going to talk about in a second, concerning Trump's legal team, that Boris Epstein, who's one of the biggest pieces of shit on the planet that I cannot stand, and I've said so many times on this program because of my own personal interactions with him in 2016, but he was someone who was stopping searches and was trying to put the kibosh on voluntary searches at Bedminster's location when the FBI was sending subpoenas, right?
Yeah, so this takes us back to October last year. So after the search of Mar-a-Lago, the Justice Department believes and communicates to Trump's legal team that they think Trump is still in possession of further classified documents. And they try and get a court order to force new searches of all of the Trump properties. The Trump lawyers litigate this, and in the meantime, they have a discussion about, what should we do? Should we do more voluntary searches, or should we litigate this and only do it if the court orders us to do so? And there's a bit of a split on the legal team. So Tim Palatore, the recently departed Tim Palatore, and Jim Trusty are in favor of kind of a cooperative approach. But Epstein and Chris Kise, the former Solicitor General in Florida, were less convinced, shall we say. And I'm just trying to be tactful, because it's a lot of this is sealed and we don't know the full, but we kind of get the gist of it. But it ultimately leads to new searches of all the properties. Palatore and Trusty get their way. They hire, from what I understand, ex-Navy special operations people who have security clearances to go through all of the properties. So, and I don't remember off the top of my head which properties were done voluntarily, but I believe it was Bedminster and I think Trump Tower, where they did their own voluntary searches. And then the actual court date came along and the court did order them to do further searches. And so I think subsequent searches of Mar-a-Lago and the storage facility, where they found a couple of straight up classified documents that was court ordered. So it was a bit of a mix of both.
Yeah. Let's talk about your story today that came out where basically it's a murder-suicide pact story about Trump's legal team. As you brought up, Tim Parlatore, he left the Trump legal team a couple weeks ago. And that story is pretty underreported because there was a lot of other things going on, but he left and there is, shocker, turmoil amongst the Trump legal team. There's just chaos because, as you alluded to, there was a difference of opinion on how to handle this documents case. And
that was only one of very many instances in which they had kind of like that was probably the most minor of all of them. If I'm
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. I encourage everybody to read the whole story because it's a fascinating recounting of kind of how you came about getting this story. But there's a lot of tidbits in there of some of the dynamics, the nuances of the legal team. But you got to tell me how you overheard a conversation between the lawyers and what you found out. This is why I always say in Washington, be careful what you say because you never know who you're sitting next to. But this was down in Palm Beach. Tell the story.
Yeah, so I'd actually had a tip that the Trump lawyers were staying at the Breakers Hotel right on the beach. And this was the day that all the lawyers were in town because they were arguing for a special master before Judge Cannon, Southern District of Florida. So after they finish their oral arguments, they hop in a SUV and they speed off. And I kind of guessed that they'd probably just gone back to their hotel and they would have dinner because it was already like 3, 4, 5 p.m. by the time we had filed and all the media stuff was done. And there are 2 restaurants at the Breakers Hotel. One kind of in the middle of the hotel and another one which is, I guess, more scenic. It's kind of on the ocean. It's the seafood bar. And I guessed they'd probably be at the seafood bar. But what I didn't guess was when I got there, the waitress would sit me down at the table next to them.
I know you were like, yes.
No, this was amazing. It was fantastic. I was like, this couldn't have been better scripted.
Right.
But the tables were actually fairly close together. And it wasn't actually like a group dinner. The way it transpired was Evan Corcoran was having dinner with Lindsay Halligan. And I actually wonder if Evan Corcoran recognized me because he was gone about 5 minutes later. And I was desperately trying to shield my face and, also look and, taking notes on my phone. Like I can hear what they're saying. It's that really close and they're talking in loud voices. Evan Corcoran gets up and leaves. He really doesn't say anything. And then almost immediately Jim Trusty comes down and I was relieved because I was like, oh, this wasn't going to be a wasted opportunity. And for about the next hour, Jim talks about everything from his frustrations with Boris Epstein to what he thought about his co-counsels to the overall legal strategy. And kind of, I made a lot of notes about it in between oysters and Wagyu sliders.
I am not mad at that at all. And it's again, it's illuminating because you see kind of there's like different tiers of lawyers within Trump's circle. There's the kind of clown car lawyers that he has, like Christina Bobb and right, that's her name. And Boris and those people. And then you have a couple more serious lawyers. Serious, I use that term loosely.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Jim Trusty's like, super serious lawyer. Used to be head of the organized crime section at the Justice Department.
Right, that's right. And then you have like somebody like Tacopino, who is a serious lawyer, just with a very big personality, but he understands how to be a trial lawyer. So all of this is, I think, leads up to another thing. Just really quick, because I know you have to run because you're going to be on MSNBC in a couple minutes. But all of this leads to, I think, what people are wondering: is Trump finally going to get indicted? Is Jack Smith any closer? Where are we at here? Because when I initially asked you to come on the show, it was about the Evan Corcoran story that you wrote a couple days ago. And the synopsis of that story was that Evan Corcoran is no longer there. He's very disgruntled at this point, and he's been testifying. And he basically is saying that, he was told not to go certain places and not to look for the classified documents. And we're trying to get to the point of who told him that, which they think it could be Trump, right? That's kind of the gist of the Evan Corcoran story.
Yeah, look, we did two stories on Evan. The first story was about the contents of his notes, which were handed over to the federal grand jury hearing the case here in Washington.
Because it was ruled that attorney-client privilege was waived
Right.
here because it could potentially be a commission of a crime. That was back in November. So this is highly unusual.
Well, it started last year, but he only ended up going before the grand jury after kind of this protracted legal battle that went all the way to the appeals court in DC. So he ended up testifying in about end of March. He handed over his notes around the end of March, and we got a partial readout of his notes. And then there was this more recent story about Evan. About how Evan had recounted to associates that he felt like he had been misled when he did this initial search for classified documents in response to the subpoena. And that was because, as he told his associates, when he got to Mar-a-Lago, he asked kind of other employees where he should search. And they said, you should look in the storage room because that's where a lot of the White House material has ended up. He goes through the roughly 40 boxes in the storage room. He pulls out about 38 classified documents, and he says, is there anywhere else I should look? Should I look in the office? Should I look in the residence? Anywhere else? And we don't know by whom, but he is effectively steered away. And he is it is communicated to him that no, the storage room is sufficient. Don't.
Yeah.
There's
pay no attention to the boxes and documents in that closet. No.
Right. No, don't bother with the office where it's probably the most likely place where there would be some sort of documents. But regardless, that from what we understand, is likely to be material to an obstruction investigation because, well, the obstruction investigation is centered on why was there an incomplete subpoena response, and part of that appears to be because he was waived off searching the office, which gets us to where we are today.
Right.
When we now have evidence for an espionage investigation.
Espionage, obstruction. It's piling on top. And, lastly, as I started to ask you before I got to the Evan Corcoran thing, before you go, where are we at here now with the Jack Smith investigation? Because I think everyone is like, all right already. It looks pretty obvious. Are you going to freaking charge the guy or what and when?
Yeah, I'm actually more of a skeptic than I think some of my colleagues. I think national security prosecution is actually really, really difficult. You look at kind of previous cases, like Petraeus, the Clinton investigation. Like these are not typically slam dunk prosecutions. And I think where we are now in terms of the investigation is pretty much done. The grand jury, as far as we are aware, has not met since May 5th. We actually understand that the grand jury may have even expired on May 18. And so if that is true, there's probably a several-week timeline for the special counsel's office to be working on prosecution memos. Each investigator who put in different parts of evidence would draft it, and then it would go to the appellate chief in the criminal division at the Justice Department, and she would go, well, fine, you say this, but defense lawyers are going to say this. Go back and rework it. You've got to make it more convincing. So that's probably where they are in terms of a timeline. As to what they will charge, that's tricky. There seems to be a lot of evidence of obstruction, but at the same time, does it go all the way to Trump? It's not clear. Was Evan told specifically by Trump, don't look in my office? It doesn't sound that way. Was the movement of boxes, it looks suspicious, about, boxes getting moved into the storage room the day before the Justice Department comes back. The timing looks suspicious, but do we actually know what was in the boxes that was moved back? It's not clear based on what we know. The special counsel might have evidence, but we just don't know.
Right. I hope so. I hope so. And not only were there audio tapes that now that we know of about Trump bragging about classified documents he had, but we also know there were surveillance tapes at Mar-a-Lago that the special counsel has that actually saw all this going on too. So, Lordy, there are lots of tapes. Hugo Lowell, thank you so much. I know this has been an insane day for you. You're on hour 13 of media interviews, and you're the best for coming and spending some time with us. Go do your MSNBC hit, and we'll have you back soon. Keep up the great work, my friend.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I love him. And he's 24 years old. He's amazing. He gives me hope about the Gen Z generation. The kids are all right. A couple things I have for you still before we end the show. We have a new campaign because Flag Day is coming up, and that is on June 14th. And then also, of course, you have 4th of July coming up. So Lincoln Project is engaged in basically a Take Back Our Flag campaign. Because I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of these freaking Trump yahoos out here running around with their phallic American flags in the back of their trucks, trying to be all and intimidate people. We're the patriots, you're not. Like, I'm tired of that. Okay, we're all Americans, and the idea of that, the symbolism and being proud of being an American and what that flag represents should not be co-opted by these MAGA bastards. The same bastards that use American flag poles to beat law enforcement officers at the Capitol on January 6th and have defaced that symbol on more than one occasion in league with MAGA, the MAGA cult, which is just not patriotism. So the Lincoln Project is asking folks to send in pictures or videos with a little context about what the flag means to you. And you can send them to our Twitter, just short videos telling us what the American flag means to you, because we really need to take this imagery back and remind folks that the American flag symbolizes all of us, the United States of America. That's everybody, regardless of what the MAGA minions try to say or try to intimidate people into thinking that somehow they own the flag. No, they don't, we say. So we would like to encourage people to help us out with that campaign. And then, we actually have a preview for you. I forgot, but now I remembered. We have an awesome ad that's going along with this Take Back the Flag campaign. And you guys are going to get the first look at it right now before anybody else. Check it out.
The American flag today flies over a nation divided. A nation where hatred and violence makes a mockery of the sacrifices of generations. A nation where one party storms the Capitol in a violent attempt to overthrow a free and fair election. A nation where one party claims ownership of the flag and the very idea of patriotism. It's time to fight back, to take back the flag from those who dishonor it. The symbols of our republic, this bold experiment that has struggled and bled to bend the arc of history, don't belong to the Republican Party. They don't belong to Donald Trump or Fox News or violent terrorists. The flag belongs to every American. It's not their flag. It's not his flag. It's our flag.
Yeah, that's right. Shout out to Peter Coyote with that amazing voice. You may recognize it. He voices a lot of our powerful ads like that. And he is a super supporter of Lincoln Project. And we're so grateful for all of his work and his partnership in these things. So there it is. Take back our flag. And finally, since Rick is not here, it doesn't just feel the same if I do a last week in the Republican Party without him. So I will say good night to you all and see you in 2 weeks. Rick will be back, and we will part ways on this last week in the Republican Party. Enjoy. See you in 2 weeks.
Target, yeah, they targeting. Target, yeah, they target kids. Target, yeah, they targeting. Target, yeah, they target.
So do not shop at Target, or else you're gay and you're a pervert. And that's all I have to say about that.
What Jefferson wrote was the state should not infect the church should infect the state.
Son, the drag queen goes swish, swish, swish. Isn't that lovely?
All diversity initiatives are anti-white initiatives.
Hardworking Americans are asked to subsidize the $80,000 degree in intersectional gender studies for their now underemployed Starbucks barista.
Can I please shake your hand? Can I please?
This is the beginning of the end for the Biden administration, saith the Lord.
The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the opposite amendment? The chair hears none.
and is adopted.
Well, the woke mind virus is basically a form of cultural Marxism and leave woke ideology on the dustbin of history. I think we have no choice but to wage a war on woke.
You realize just how sort of nasally and effeminate his voice is.
Rob DeSanctimonious and his poll numbers are dropping like a rock.
Look, this is what he's got going on. He's going to be the ultimate rhino. Ron, you are the ultimate rhino.
So in the eyes of the court of heaven, Donald J. Trump is still the president of the United States.
No, Elon's on the spectrum, and Ron's a little on the spectrum.
Almost impossible for a white guy who's not gay, apparently, to get appointed here.
I've always rejected the politicization of the weather.
I have no animosity or hatred toward the United States federal government. And I have forgiven my captors.
The members are reminded to abide by decorum of the House.
They're living on planet crazy, and I don't frankly want to be on that same planet with them because they've lost their minds.